Hey guys, tonight we slip softly into the glow of torchlight and ancient stone, where a horse flaps wings the size of sails over a bubbling spring just outside the city-state of Corinth. You're not dreaming, though you will be soon enough. In the stillness, dew collects on leaves, and you, yes you, stand there blinking at what can only be described as a flying horse, calmly sipping from a pool like it isn't actively defying physics. The horse is white, shimmering, almost, and its feathers ruffle in a breeze that doesn't touch the grass. Pegasus, they'll call it later. For now, you just think, I should probably capture that. You probably won't survive this. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop your location and local time in the comments. I love seeing where and when you're listening from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The thing is, this isn't your first brush with the improbable. You've already got a bit of a reputation around town. Not a town drunk kind of reputation, more of a that guy who's either deeply cursed or dangerously lucky vibe. You're Bellerophon, born somewhere in the cloudy corners of Corinthian myth, probably descended from Poseidon, allegedly the sea god, possibly your dad, though no one's filling out a family tree to check. You're also, technically speaking, a murderer. Yes, that came out of nowhere, but so did the whole event. A man lay dead, and you, looking surprised and holding a weapon, were declared not exactly guilty, but not guilty either. It was an accidental killing, which in ancient Greek legal terms mostly just meant awkward. You flee, as one does, to another kingdom. Time to wait for things to cool down. That's how you wind up in Tiryns, in the court of King Pegasus, who greets you politely and lets you stay. There's only one problem: his wife, Queen Aniae, or Sthenibia, depending on which old vase you read, thinks you're cute. And you? Well, you are hilariously bad at court intrigue. You reject her advances with an awkward throat clearing and a stammered, "I'm honored, but, I have a horse to catch." Naturally, she's furious. You, somehow, have insulted royal dignity, a woman scorned, and household decorum, all before lunch. She runs to the king and screams you tried to seduce her. Pegasus believes her, or maybe just doesn't want to deal with the drama. But he's not totally heartless. He's also not brave enough to kill a guest, what with the gods frowning on that sort of thing. So he hatches a plan that, by ancient standards, is practically courteous. He sends you off to his father-in-law in Lycia, with a sealed letter. A letter that essentially reads, "Dear in-law, please murder the bearer of this message. Thanks!" Historians still argue whether this sealed letter of doom trope was genuinely common in diplomacy or just a mythological convenience to avoid open assassination. Either way, you don't know what's in the letter. You just nod cheerfully and pack a few olives. The journey is long, dusty, and frankly uneventful, unless you count the moment you have to cross a river on a plank while a nearby farmer insists this isn't a bridge, it's a drying rack. Somewhere along the way, you start dreaming of Pegasus. Not in a normal way. In your dreams, Athena, the goddess of wisdom and war and don't you dare question me, shows up holding a bridle made of gold. You wake up under an olive tree, sweating, heart racing, muttering, "Was that a dream or a divine sales pitch?" Turns out, it was real. You find the golden bridle next to you. No explanation. Just there. Like forgotten car keys. This isn't suspicious at all. Meanwhile, back in Lycia, King Iabates reads the letter you delivered and sighs. He, too, doesn't want the gods to smite him for killing a guest. But unlike Pegasus, he adds a touch of local flavor. He decides to send you off on a quest. Because obviously that's the logical thing to do when you want someone dead. So here you are, recently pardoned murderer, dream bridle holder, facing your first assignment from a man who'd rather see you die quietly than offend Olympus. And yet you're not worried. Not yet. Because somewhere deep in your bones, something tells you, you might not survive this, but if you do, the view will be amazing. You reach Lycia with dusty boots and a letter that's basically a silent death sentence, still blissfully unaware of its contents. King Iabates, a weathered man with the kind of beard that suggests he's seen too much and questioned too little, takes one look at the seal, reads it alone in a back room, and promptly pours himself a tall drink. The letter, lovingly penned by his son-in-law Pegasus, doesn't mince words: "Kill Bellerophon. Love me." But here's the thing, hospitality, or xenia, was sacred in the ancient Greek world. Hosting a guest meant protection, even if said guest was, oh, I don't know, potentially sleeping with your daughter-in-law or riding around with a suspicious glow. Killing a guest in your home was a one-way ticket to a curse, a plague, or an especially angry Hermes prank. So Iobates, thoughtful man that he is, chooses a middle path. Instead of executing you, he offers you lunch. Roast lamb, olives, figs, fresh bread. You're halfway through your second helping when he smiles gently and asks if you'd be interested in a small favor. You swallow a fig whole and nod. Sure, anything. Bad move. Because what he actually says is, there's this local nuisance we've been meaning to clean up. A bit of a pest, really. Name's Chimera. You blink. Historians still debate whether this next part is metaphoric, symbolic, or an example of extremely literal myth-making. But according to everyone from Homer to Hesiod, the Chimera is a three-headed monster, part lion, part goat, part snake, that breathes fire and lives in the hills, ruining villages, burning livestock, and generally failing to mind its own business. You, of course, think this must be an exaggeration. 3 heads, you ask. Technically 1 head, Iobates says. Just, lots of parts. And fire? He gestures vaguely. You'll see. Now, a normal person might have declined the job. Moved to a quieter village. Opened a taverna. But you're Bellerophon, and you've just had a dream about a flying horse, and you do still have that suspiciously divine bridle tucked in your satchel. So you nod, brush off the crumbs, and set off to find Pegasus. Because yes, the horse is real. Or at least, real enough for the people of Corinth to have developed elaborate theories about it. Some say he sprang from the blood of Medusa. Others claim he's the offspring of the north wind in a cloud. One scroll even suggests he's a cosmic joke by the gods, which honestly feels on brand. You find him near a sacred spring, again, unbothered, sipping water like a model in a sparkling beverage commercial. His wings are wide as a barn door, and he doesn't seem especially interested in conversation. You, trying not to startle him, approach slowly, golden bridle in one hand, fig in the other, for emotional support, mostly. Now, here's where the story gets oddly peaceful. Because instead of bolting or trampling you, Pegasus lets you come close. You whisper something, maybe a prayer, maybe just a polite hello, and gently slide the bridle over his head. He doesn't resist. In fact, he shivers, stretches, and lowers himself just enough for you to climb on. It's all weirdly romantic, if you ignore the impending monster. Your first flight is less majestic leap and more panic flail. Pegasus takes off like a slingshot, and suddenly you're dozens of feet above the Lycian landscape, clinging to his mane, screaming wind into your own mouth. The ground spins. Trees blur. Villages become ants. You think you might be sick but also weirdly proud. You're flying. On a horse. This should not be possible. It's glorious. It's nauseating. It's also very windy. Still, you manage. And after a few loops and barrel rolls, unnecessary, show-offy barrel rolls, you and Pegasus find your rhythm. He banks smoothly. You steer gently. There's even a moment where the two of you fly into a patch of warm air and just glide. You don't speak. You don't need to. And then you see it. The Chimera's lair sits at the edge of a smoking ravine, somewhere between a collapsed village and a cliff that looks recently chewed. The air smells like burnt leather and goat. You feel your heart thud in your chest, not metaphorically. You can literally hear it echo in your helmet. You circle once. Twice. Then Pegasus dies. The Chimera looks up mid-snack, yes, it's eating something, and roars. All 3 heads. In harmony. Fire bursts from its mouth, nearly singing your borrowed sandals. Pegasus jukes left, then right, then climbs. You don't have a battle plan. You have a spear, weak arm muscles, and a horse with strong opinions. But somehow, it works. You dive. You stab. You scream something heroic. The goat head bites your leg, the snake tail whips your back, and the lion just looks annoyed. Pegasus kicks. You jab again. There's fire, again. You duck. It singes your eyebrow. You yell more heroic nonsense. Then, with one final loop-de-loop of reckless bravery, you drop your spear squarely into the creature's gaping, flaming mouth. It swallows. Chokes. Explodes. And just like that, it's over. You and Pegasus land nearby, singed but whole, slightly smug. The villagers peek out of hiding, then erupt in cheers. One child throws you a flower. It hits your face. You've slain the Chimera. And you haven't even unpacked yet. Back in Lycia, you return not dead, which is immediately awkward for King Iobates. You stride into his hall, still smoky from Chimera fallout, looking like a baked potato in armor. Pegasus, ever the diva, waits outside the palace entrance like he's above entering human buildings. Fair. The servants scatter. Iobates drops a figure. You smile. He blinks. This is not how the story was supposed to go. Historians still argue whether this particular moment, the slaying of the Chimera and the hero's casual return, was later embroidered by poets or if it genuinely caused several local nobles to faint into their dinner. Either way, it happened fast, and you were at the center of it, soot-stained and smelling faintly of goat. Iobates, master of improvised hospitality, recovers quickly. He gestures to a feast already in motion. There's always a feast in myth, it's like a contract clause, and invites you to eat. You sit. You chew. You try not to wince from the snakebite on your thigh. You figure your job is done. But the king is a slippery eel in a diplomatic robe. Instead of praising your bravery and offering to upgrade your lodging, he leans in conspiratorially and says, "That was impressive. Truly. But, there is one more small matter." You sigh. Because this always happens. Turns out, Lycia has been having some border issues. Specifically, with the Amazons. Yes, those Amazons, the mythical all-female warriors, famous for being both brilliant tacticians and not especially thrilled with Greek men wandering into their lands. Some say they were based on real nomadic tribes from the Eurasian steppes. Others argue they're entirely fictional, designed by poets who thought plate mail and feminism should share a tent. Either way, they're real enough in your story. Iobates wants you to go fight them. Not all of them, he says quickly. Just scatter their forces. Make them think twice. You squint at him. So you want me to go annoy a nation of elite warrior women who train from birth, ride like thunder, and view men as an occasional inconvenience? He nods. Smiles. You mutter something under your breath that's probably not fit for Homeric verse and grab your saddle. Pegasus, to his credit, does not judge. The journey east is different this time, less adrenaline, more dread. The air changes. The landscape flattens into hard grasslands and cold wind. You fly lower now, watching the forests break into open plains. Smoke rises in distant spirals. You hear the clash of spears and training drills. The Amazons don't wait for you to arrive. They're already ready. There's no dramatic showdown. No single combat. No movie trailer moment. Instead, it's chaos. Your strategy is borrowed mostly from birds of prey. You dive. Drop things. Make noise. Startle horses. Hit their supply lines. You don't want to kill them, you just want to get out of this alive. Pegasus helps. The Amazons, and used to a flying distraction, are thrown off balance. For now, you manage to spook their formation, confuse their scouts, scatter a few tents. At one point, you swoop in low enough to grab a banner just to prove you can. It flaps behind you like a stolen napkin. The Amazons shout. One throws a spear. It misses you by inches and takes out a tree. You take that as your cue to leave. By the time you return to Lycia, the king is pacing. He's sent scouts to verify your survival. When he sees you arrive, dragging the Amazon banner behind your horse like a weird cape, he claps awkwardly. Well done, he says. Very strategic. You've got a few bruises and a new respect for their battle formation. I'd call it barely avoided disaster, you mumble. But secretly, you're proud. You've bested fire monsters and an army of warriors, and you haven't even lost your sandals. You're also starting to notice a trend. Every time you succeed, people get more nervous around you. Including the king. Because now he has a guest he tried to kill, who keeps returning stronger. You, on the other hand, are just trying to figure out whether Pegasus prefers apples or dates. So now you're sitting on the palace terrace with a bowl of grapes, one sandal off, feeling kind of heroic, kind of itchy, and definitely ready for a bath. But of course, you don't get one. Because King Iobates, in his infinite creativity, is already planning the next step in his Please Accidentally Die campaign. And here it comes, another task. You're sent to battle the Solymi. You furrow your brow. The who? The Solymi, Iobates repeats, in that tone politicians use when pretending you definitely studied this in school. Mountain tribe. Troublemakers. Need taming. You nod slowly. You don't know who the Solymi are, But you do know what this smells like, another polite assassination attempt, lightly glazed in diplomacy. Historians still argue whether the Solymi were a real tribe or just a placeholder name for those people over the next hill. Some think they were proto-Lycians. Others guess they were conveniently vague enemies cooked up for heroic resumes. Either way, what you're about to face is not vague at all. Because the Solymi? They're waiting for you. Your first clue is the sudden hail of arrows the moment you crest the pass. Pegasus jerks sideways mid-flight, and you narrowly avoid becoming the world's first mythological pincushion. These folks don't give speeches. No bold declarations, no who dares approach our land. Just immediate violence, old-fashioned and efficient. You spend the next 2 days playing mythological dodgeball with spears and rocks while trying not to lose altitude in mountainous terrain that would make goats nervous. The Solymi aren't magical. They don't have a three-headed mascot. But they're coordinated, angry, and really good at hiding behind boulders. This is your most frustrating challenge yet. Because you can't just fly in, stab something weird, and fly out. This time, you have to outthink real humans, messy, clever, deeply territorial humans. They block your food supplies. They collapse paths. They even leave false trails to lure you into ambushes. At one point, you land to rest, and Pegasus steps on a camouflage spike trap that makes him whinny so loud it echoes into next Tuesday. You feel like a complete amateur. But you adapt. You start studying the terrain. You map wind patterns. You stop flying straight into ravines and start using updrafts. You find a rhythm, a way to outmaneuver and confuse them without engaging too long. You don't win by force, you win by turning into a mythological mosquito. One night, you camp on a ledge overlooking the valley. Pegasus snores, wings tucked neatly. You sit beside a tiny fire, nursing a bruised elbow and a nasty cut that might have come from a tree, a rock, or possibly your own dagger. You're not sure anymore. And for the first time, you wonder aloud, why am I still doing this? Not just this ambush. All of it. The Chimera, the Amazons, the suspiciously gold bridle. You remember Corinth, your hometown, now distant and irrelevant. You remember Pretus, with his bland murder note. You remember Athena, maybe, or maybe just a dream. You're starting to suspect this isn't about punishment anymore. It's about watching you dance. Iabates, like Pretus before him, keeps escalating. Not out of necessity, but because each time you survive, it becomes harder to stop. You're not a man anymore. You're a performance. The next morning, you return to Lycia again. This time, limping. And Iabates? He looks panicked. He doesn't say it aloud, but you can see the creeping realization in his face. Nothing is killing this guy. He invites you to rest. Offers you wine. Calls you friend. You smile, sip politely, and casually feed Pegasus a honeyed fig. And the king? He's already sweating over his next bright idea. You're no longer surprised when King Iabates greets you with that too-wide smile and a sentence that starts with, "There's just one more thing." At this point, if he invited you for a quiet breakfast, you'd still expect to wrestle a god by lunchtime. This time, however, the request is oddly quiet. No grand declarations. No exotic monsters. He just wants you to deal with some pirates. You blink. Pirates? He nods, as if this is perfectly reasonable. They've been raiding the coast, taking wine, setting small fires. Very disruptive. Now, a normal person might pause here to ask, why is the king sending a flying horseman to deal with what is, essentially, a naval problem? But you've learned not to ask. You've also learned that Pegasus hates water. Which is fair. Horses and boats were never friends. You gear up anyway. The coastline isn't far, just a few hours by wing. The cliffs are high, the beach is thin and rocky. You spot the pirate ships before they spot you. They're not large, just fast, ragged sails and lean crews. The kind that steal figs and brag about it for weeks. You make your entrance dramatic, Pegasus swooping over their ships, your spear gleaming in the sun. The pirates scatter. You don't even need to strike. You just dive once or twice, knock over a few crates, and let the wind whip your cloak like a thundercloud. It's absurdly effective. Most of them jump overboard. You fly back inland smug and unsalted. Mission complete. Back at the palace, the king receives you with something approaching dread. You sit on a low marble bench. He stands awkwardly behind a large urn. He's out of challenges. Out of schemes. Out of patience with fate. that's when the tables turn. Because, after so many trials, Iabitz does something no one expects, least of all you. He calls a meeting. Not just a private chat, but a full audience. Priests, nobles, advisors, 2 confused dogs, a suspicious-looking goat. They gather in the stone hall, squinting as you walk in. And the king speaks. He holds up the letter you delivered, Preda's original note, and reads it aloud. Gasps. Theatrical ones. A few people drop things. It turns out the king, like you, has grown a conscience. Or maybe just a fear of retribution. Either way, he confesses to trying to kill you. Explains that he now sees your survival not as luck, but as a sign. The gods, who've remained frustratingly silent but undeniably active, clearly like you. Historians still debate whether Iabitz's change of heart was religious awe, political panic, or just exhaustion. Either way, it ends with him doing something wildly unexpected. He offers you his daughter's hand in marriage and names you heir to his kingdom. You blink again. Then again. The room erupts in cheerful noise. Drums, lyres, the goat sneezes. You stand there in your dusty tunic, holding a fruit you don't remember picking up, completely baffled. You, the fugitive horseman, have become a prince. It's not clear whether you've won something or just been handed a larger target to paint on your chest. But for now, there are garlands. There's honey cake. There's Pegasus being fed with olives on a silver tray like he's the real groom. You try not to laugh. Too hard. Because the truth is, this is funny. It's ridiculous. You were supposed to be a tragic footnote. Instead, you're being cheered by people who probably tried to poison your dinner 3 days ago. Pegasus snorts. You toast him. The absurdity doesn't erase the danger. It just makes it easier to live with. You've gone from exile to heir. From guest to demigod. And through it all, you've had no master plan, no divine instruction manual. Just a bridle, a winged horse, and the unsettling ability to not die when you probably should. You're Bellerophon. And somehow, that's enough. So you're a prince now. Not in the charming, pumpkin carriage sense, but in the awkward, Lycian nobles side-eye you during banquet sense. Your new palace rooms smell faintly of citrus and caution. The corridors are marble and shadowy. There are peacocks, which feel excessive. Every servant bows, but half of them look like they're wondering how to poison you with a fig. And Pegasus? He's completely unfazed. He's taken up residence in the olive grove behind the royal stables, where he refuses to interact with the other horses and eats only from a silver bowl. You don't blame him. The other horses stare at him like he's a celebrity they're too shy to approach. You try to settle into your new role, really. You attend meetings. You nod while advisors argue about taxes and olive export regulations. You even wear nicer robes. But your hands keep drifting back to your spear. And your eyes keep wandering skyward. Because being a prince is fine. But you weren't built for court life. You were built for the ridiculous. And the ridiculous is about to call again. One afternoon, a young messenger stumbles into court with terror in his eyes and soot in his hair. A village has been burned. Not by pirates. Not by the Amazons. But by something else. The only clue? Scorched fields, trampled fences, and claw marks too big for any normal creature. The villagers call it the shadow in the mist. You sigh. Of course they do. You mount Pegasus before the council can object. The advisors yell things like, "Let's send scouts," and "Isn't there a committee for this?" But you're already in the air, the wind tugging your sleeves and freedom humming beneath your ribs. You fly west. The land below shifts from patchy farmland to wild scrub. Hills roll like sleeping giants. Smoke clings to the trees like nervous fog. You spot the village, half-burned, strangely quiet. Pegasus lands in a clearing. You dismount. The silence is unsettling. No birds. No barking dogs. Just wind and scorched earth. And then you see it. Massive tracks. Deep. With talon-shaped impressions. Something big passed through here. A woman peeks from behind a collapsed wall. It came at dusk, she whispers. Wings like sails. Eyes like burning wine. It shrieked. You give her the last of your dried figs and walk toward the ravine where the tracks lead. You find it on a ridge just before sunset. The creature stands still, massive and hunched, feathers blackened, eyes glowing with low, furious light. It's a griffin, or something pretending to be one. Lion body. Eagle head. Wings like nightmares. Historians still argue whether the griffin myths came from fossil findings in Central Asia, or from garbled trade stories that got drunk and exaggerated. Either way, what's in front of you isn't folklore. It's very real. And very angry. Pegasus stomps the ground, restless. You grip your spear, heart pounding. You try to come up with a plan. There is none. Just instinct. You attack. The sky becomes chaos. You dive. It shrieks. The griffin lunges, claws swiping air. Pegasus banks hard, and you nearly fall. The wind howls. Trees shudder. You loop around, jabbing, dodging, dragging the creature away from the village. You fight above the cliffs. One slip and you'll plummet into rock. The griffin catches your arm, talons tear fabric, blood beads. You grit your teeth. Pegasus bucks, twisting midair. The griffin tumbles, recovers, circles back. You don't win cleanly. You win by a thread. One final pass. One well-aimed throw. Your spear lodges under its wing, and the creature falters. It crashes into the trees, shaking the earth. You hover above, breath ragged, arm bleeding. Pegasus circles once, slow and steady. Then you return to the village. There's no celebration. Just stunned silence, soft weeping, and the relief that comes after a long-held breath. You say nothing. You don't need to. Because by now, your legend travels faster than you do. And somewhere in the sky above, the stars begin to whisper your name. You return to the palace scratched, bruised, and wearing half a tunic that smells like roast griffin. The guards at the gates stare like you've walked in trailing moonlight and madness. Which is fair? You're bleeding from the shoulder, and Pegasus has part of a claw stuck in his saddle strap like a trophy. Inside, no one knows what to say. Iobates tries. Another victory, he says with a watery smile, like he's congratulating a thunderstorm for arriving on time. We'll hold a feast. Of course you will. And you go. You sit through it. There are lyres and toasts, and someone makes a song on the spot that rhymes Bellerophon with strong in ways that should be illegal. Pegasus refuses to come inside but allows 3 children to braid flowers into his tail out in the garden. But your mind isn't at the banquet. It's with the Chimera. And the griffin. And something else. You're starting to notice a pattern, and it's not just the monster week schedule. It's the composition of the monsters themselves. They're not just dangerous, they're weird. Too weird to be natural. The Chimera was a lion, a goat, and a snake. The griffin, half eagle, half lion. Fire-breathing, winged, hybrid things that seem designed to test you. Or taunt you. You start asking questions. Priests. Old poets. Drunk merchants who claim to have seen a snake with 3 knees. And the stories come. A lion with a rooster's head near Phrygia. A serpent that sings lullabies. A stag with silver antlers who only appears to people doomed to fall in love with the moon. The world is crawling with strange creatures. Or it was. Historians still argue whether these creatures were based on garbled sightings of rare animals, ancient fossils, or simply psychedelic grapes. But the people you speak to, those huddled in mountain huts or leaning on olive presses, they believe. They've seen things. You begin to wonder, were these beasts always here? Or are they here because of you? There's no answer. But the question haunts you. One night, you find yourself sketching the Chimera in the dirt beside Pegasus. You draw its goat head with too many teeth, the lion's eyes, the tail that hissed like boiling water. Then you draw the griffin, beak cracked, wings splayed. They don't look natural. They look like someone put them together after misreading instructions. Pegasus snorts, nudges your shoulder, then flops dramatically onto the grass like a dog who deserves a raise. You smile. But only briefly. Because the question won't leave you alone. Why you? Is it just the gods playing a game? Did Athena know when she gave you that golden bridle that you'd become a traveling abomination hunter? Or is this just what happens when you try to ride glory all the way to the stars? You decide to visit the oracle. Not the famous one, Delphi is far, and your winged ride doesn't enjoy mountain thermals. Instead, you find a small, moss-covered shrine in a cave beside a river so clear it reflects your thoughts back at you. The oracle is old. Possibly older than the cave. She speaks without looking at you. Your beasts are symbols, she says. And symptoms. A sickness of pride, wrapped in myth. You fight what the world fears, and what it desires. You wait for more. But she falls asleep mid-sentence. Classic. You return home a little wiser, a little more confused, and a lot more tired. And still, the whispers grow. People start calling you more than just Bellerophon. They call you Slayer, Skyrider, God-favored. Some begin lighting candles in your name. Others avoid you like a walking thunderclap. You don't know which is worse. Even Pegasus is changing. He flies higher now, almost to the edge of sight. He stares at the clouds with a focus you've never seen. Like he's waiting for something. Or listening. And late one night, lying on a cold roof tile and watching stars smear across the black sky, you think, maybe this isn't a story of triumph. Maybe it's a warning. It's early morning when the trumpets sound. Not the musical kind, the emergency kind. The someone's attacking us again kind. You sit up in bed so fast you nearly fall off the marble ledge that doubles as a royal mattress. Your new ceremonial robe is tangled around your leg. Pegasus, sleeping outside the balcony, lifts his head and huffs like a very tired war machine. You don't even bother asking what's wrong. You just run. Outside, the courtyard is chaos. Guards scrambling, pages shouting, nobles looking for excuses to retreat to their wine cellars. A scout gallops in from the east, panting and wide-eyed. "They're coming," he gasps. "The Amazons." You blink. Again? Apparently yes. But this time, they're not reacting to an attack. They're bringing one. See, word got out. You stole their banner during your last flyby, remember? What you thought was a minor distraction has been declared an insult. You know how some people hold grudges? The Amazons collect them, polish them, and file them under reasons to flatten a kingdom. Now they've assembled. A full force. Not just warriors, but war chariots, archers, mounted fighters with spears longer than most ladders. Their queen, possibly Antiope or Penthesilea depending on your source, rides at the front on a black stallion that foams at the mouth like it's reciting poetry in rage. Historians still argue whether the Amazons ever mounted a full-scale invasion of Lycia or if this was stitched into the myth to give Bellerophon one last impossible test. But in your version, they're real, they're here, and they're furious. You mount Pegasus without ceremony. No armor. No feast day tunic. Just you, your spear, and a look that says, "I didn't mean to start a war." You fly to meet them before they reach the city. The air is tense. You hover above their ranks, trying to look noble and not wildly outnumbered. The Amazon queen looks up. She doesn't yell. She stares. Long and hard. And then she lifts her spear, and with a single shout, too sharp, too confident, they charge. What follows is not a battle. It's a chess match. The Amazons don't fight like the Solomai. They're organized, fast, and absurdly precise. They don't fall for feints. They don't scatter under pressure. They adapt. When Pegasus dives, they scatter and regroup within seconds. When you knock over their supply carts, they build new ones out of trees. At one point, they catch one of your spears midair and throw it back. You realize something alarming. This is the first time you've met an enemy just as clever as you. And they're not mythical. They're just very, very good. Pegasus begins to tire. His wings falter slightly. You pull him higher, into the clouds, to rest, to think. Below, the Amazon forces begin setting up a siege perimeter. They're not just attacking. They're settling in. This isn't a skirmish. It's a statement. So you make one, too. You fly to their camp that night. Alone. No spear. No armor. Just a small white flag stitched from a temple curtain and a bag of figs. Because what else are peace offerings made of? You land 20 paces from the queen's tent. The Amazons don't flinch. Their guards surround you instantly. Spears pointed. Eyes narrow. Pegasus huffs but stays still. The queen steps forward. You hold out the bag. "I'm sorry I stole your banner. I thought it was funny." There is a long pause. Then, she laughs. Not a cruel laugh. Not a villain laugh. Just genuine surprise. Like she didn't expect you to admit it. Or bring snacks. She takes the figs. You sit. You talk. She doesn't forgive you. But she doesn't kill you either. She agrees to leave on one condition. A rematch. One-on-one. Not to the death. Just a contest. For honor. You accept. The next morning, the city gathers. You and the queen meet in the valley. No tricks. No tricks yet, at least. The rules are simple. First to be unhorsed, or on Pegasus' head, loses. The fight is glorious. You duck. You dive. She spins her spear like a tornado. Pegasus dances like he's back in the clouds. And when it's over, after a full hour of grunts, laughter, and near-death flourishes, you fall. Gracefully, dramatically, face first into the dirt. She helps you up. And she declares you the victor. You blink. But? A loss? She shrugs. You made it interesting. And then she and her army ride off. No siege. No revenge. Just a respectful bow and the sound of hoofbeats vanishing into the hills. You return to the palace, dirt-smudged and grinning. Because somehow, against every odd, you didn't win. You earned it. The victory tastes strange this time. Not because it wasn't real, but because it was too human. No monsters. No divine fireworks. Just two people riding their mounts in a dusty valley, matching each other move for move, like rivals in a very athletic dream sequence. You didn't outweed a lion-goat snake this time. You didn't explode a griffin. You just earned someone's respect. Which, oddly, feels harder. The city celebrates anyway. Lycian children now play Bellerophon and the Queen, taking turns dramatically falling off tree stumps. You're offered even more land you don't need. Someone suggests building a Pegasus-shaped fountain. Pegasus whinnies once, flatly, and the idea dies. But you're restless. You fly again. Not because there's a threat, just because the sky still calls you like a half-remembered lullaby. One morning, you take off before the dew dries. No mission. No speech. Just altitude. That's when it happens. You're soaring high over the southern ridges when the wind shifts oddly, curling like breath against your cheek. Pegasus stalls mid-glide. Below you, the trees seem to ripple. And then, ambush. The Salome. Again. You don't know how they tracked you. You don't know how they're in position. But they are. And this time, they're smarter. They've set up siege weapons, actual ballistae, carved from forest pine and soaked in oil. The kind of hardware you thought only showed up in siege legends. They fire. You bank left. A bolt whistles past, close enough to make Pegasus shiver. You're not prepared. You don't even have your good spear. All you can do is dodge, climb, and think. And this is where your story bends again. Because this time, you can't win alone. So you go back. Back to the palace. Back to the same advisors who once tried to kill you with passive-aggressive quests. You burst into a war meeting mid-olive tasting and slam a map onto the table. I need help, you say. A pause. Then, surprisingly, nobody laughs. Because you're not just Bellerophon the monster slayer anymore. You're Bellerophon the diplomat. The Amazon Queen's sparring partner. The one who survived everything. You've become the storm that walks in politely and leaves changed weather behind. And when you say the Salome are moving again, people believe you. You assemble a force, archers, scouts, even a few foreign volunteers who claim they once saw you throw a cyclops. You didn't. Pegasus becomes your messenger, your scout, your co-general. You send him on high passes to chart enemy movement. He returns with feathers singed and eyes sharp. The campaign begins. It's not heroic. It's muddy. Slow. Frustrating. You dig trenches. You study terrain. You don't duel anyone. You delegate. And little by little, it works. The Salome retreat. Their alliance fractures. Their ballistae burn. And by the end of it, you're not the hero with a spear in the air. You're the one making peace terms over lentils. Historians still argue whether Bellerophon's campaign against the Salome was real or an allegory for the exhaustion of perpetual war. But what's certain is this, it marked the turning point. Because for the first time, you win without Pegasus needing to dive from the heavens. And afterward? You're different. You sit by the river more often. You carve figures from olive wood. You visit villages, not as a symbol, but as a man. People still tell stories about you, but now they include things like he helped fix our well and he brought the kids barley bread. You should be content. And yet, one night, lying under a blanket of stars, Pegasus snoring beside you, you look at the moon and whisper the question you've kept buried since your first battle. Was I chosen? No one answers. The stars blink back, and you start to wonder whether this isn't a story of destiny at all, but of momentum. Because what do you do when your legend keeps walking, even after your feet want to stop? You wake one morning to silence. Not the good kind, the ominous kind. The servants tiptoe. The guards fidget. Even the birds in the palace garden seem to be chirping with restraint. You pull on your robe, toss on your sword, not for protection, just out of habit, and head toward the main hall. King Iabitz is waiting for you. He gestures you in with a face that says this is going to be a whole thing. A scroll has arrived. Not from a local governor. Not a distress signal from some scorched village. This one bears a seal, Corinth. Your old home. The name alone stirs something strange in you, like touching a stone still warm from the sun. The letter is from King Pretus. Yes, that King Pretus. The man who tried to have you quietly killed via sealed letter courier service. He's requesting a visit. Not sending soldiers. Not demanding tribute. Just asking if he might stop by. It's absurd. Naturally, the court is in an uproar. Half think it's a trap. The other half think it's a joke. A few advisors suggest you challenge him to a wrestling match upon arrival. Pegasus bites one of those advisors gently on the sleeve to express disagreement. And you? You just nod. Let him come. When Pretus finally arrives, it's under an enormous awning with enough purple fabric to dress an entire mediocre theater troupe. He steps from his chariot in ceremonial garb, flanked by servants, guards, and a woman whose expression reads as deeply unimpressed. You recognize her instantly, Queen Ania. Yes, the same queen who once falsely accused you of seduction. This reunion is awkward. You walk out to meet them in your plain traveling cloak, no crown, no flourish. Pegasus stands behind you, wings spread for effect, looking like a disapproving father at a family reunion. Pretus dismounts. He bows. And to your absolute confusion, he apologizes. Not dramatically. Not with flair. Just, honestly. He confesses that he wronged you. That the queen lied. That he should have investigated instead of outsourcing your death to his father-in-law. And then he offers you a gift. A gold chalice. Inscribed with your name. Pegasus sniffs it suspiciously. Historians still debate whether this moment happened at all. Some say it was added later to soften Pretus' reputation. Others claim Bellerophon never returned to Corinth in any version of the myth. But if you're living this story, here's what's true. A man who once wrote your execution order now stands before you, trembling slightly, trying to make peace. And something inside you, the boy who ran from his mistake, the prince who tumbled from the sky, the soldier who slept beside monsters, softens. You forgive him. Why? Because you're tired. Because you've won. Because somewhere between the Chimera and the Solemni, you became the person people come to not for battle, but for closure. You invite him to dine. The meal is slow, tense at first, then warmer. The queen says little, but she watches you in a way that suggests regret, deep, unspoken, probably lifelong. You don't speak to her directly. She doesn't speak to you. And somehow, that feels just. Pretus stays for 2 days. You show him the stables, the cliffs, the olive grove where Pegasus insists on eating only from hand-carved bowls now. The two of you speak of nothing urgent, just memory, and regret, and how strange it is that life keeps marching even when you wish it would sit down. And when he leaves, he bows again. You don't return it, but you smile. Because this might be the strangest part of your journey, learning that sometimes the people who tried to destroy you don't get vanquished. They get humbled. And they go home. You watch his chariot vanish into the dust. And for the first time in a long while, the silence that follows is peaceful. You try retirement. Honestly, you do. The palace quiets, the scrolls stop arriving, and the local monsters seem to take a well-earned vacation. You even start a small garden near Pegasus' olive grove, growing thyme and cucumbers with a level of intensity that deeply alarms your servants. You sit through council meetings with one eyebrow raised, politely declining every new festival proposed in your honor. Perhaps fewer statues, you suggest. We're running out of tasteful pedestals. But boredom creeps in like damp. Pegasus, for his part, grows increasingly restless. He no longer circles lazily over the palace for leisure flights. He climbs, high. Too high. You watch him sometimes vanish into the clouds until he's just or nothing at all. When he returns, he looks distant. Not sad. Just occupied. You wonder if he dreams of Olympus. You wonder if he's meant for somewhere higher. You also wonder, quietly, if he's getting ready to leave. One afternoon, as you nap beneath a fig tree, a guard wakes you with a sheepish bell. My lord, the stables, he's gone again. Where? We don't know. You climb to the highest tower and scan the sky. No silhouette. No shriek of wings. Just open blue. You wait for hours, hands gripping the balcony rail until the marble leaves marks in your skin. Finally, just before dusk, he returns. Silent. Soaring low. But not to you. He lands on the temple roof. And just stands there. Looking up. You follow him the next day. Not on his back, behind him, on foot, through the gardens, across the orchard, to the cliffs above the valley. He faces the horizon, wings folded, head tilted like he's listening to something you can't hear. You stand beside him. You're not staying, are you? He doesn't respond, because of course he can't. But the silence says everything. It's not defiance. Not rejection. It's calling. Like thunder that hasn't reached your village yet. You nod. I figured. It's around this time you start having dreams again. Athena, in flickers, her face never visible, just that bridal flashing gold in the darkness, and her voice like distant flint. You've served your purpose. You wake up angry. Who gets to decide when your purpose ends? That day, Pegasus doesn't return. The next, he doesn't either. On the third, a priest arrives with his eyes wide and voice shaking. He's in the sky, he says, riding the wind near Olympus itself. You ride out to the mountain edge, watch the upper heavens through squinted eyes. And sure enough, he's there. Not descending. Not circling. Just lifting. Wing after wing beat toward something greater. Toward the gods. Historians still argue whether this was divine reward or poetic license. Some say Pegasus was always destined to serve Zeus. Others claim the gods simply stole him, saw your bond, your victories, and decided it belonged to them now. But standing there, wind at your back, you don't feel robbed. You feel like a chapter is ending. You return to the palace slower. The days that follow are quiet again, but not like before. This is the quiet of a room you've left. A legend with the spine cracked open and thumbed through one too many times. The court still reveres you, of course. They still bow, still toast, still hum songs that rhyme your name with hero. But something's missing. Something winged. Something absurd and faithful and free. And you, despite your titles and your victories, are finally alone. You start walking more. Just walking. Not pacing royal corridors or checking on your cucumber vines, but disappearing beyond the palace gates with nothing but a staff and a bit of bread tucked in your belt. The guards panic at first, of course. You're the king's son-in-law. The Chimera slayer. You're not supposed to wander. But you tell them not to follow, and they learn quickly not to disobey. You head west some days, east on others. Up into the ridges, down into the olive valleys, across villages where the only person who recognizes you is an old woman with one eye and a very aggressive goose. The truth is, you don't feel like a hero anymore. And that might be the first honest thing you've felt in months. There's no need to impress the villagers. You help fix a roof, chase off some wolves with a shout, carry water when someone's old bones can't. You eat by campfires, sleep under trees, and, most nights, dream of wing beats. Meanwhile, back in Lycia, your absence becomes legend. Not concern, legend. They say Bellerophon walks the land now, judging the hearts of men. Others whisper you vanished into the mountains and talk with gods. One bard sings that you've become a wandering spirit who only appears during storms to lift lost children onto your back. You hear that one from a shepherd boy and nearly choke on your lentils. Historians, of course, don't agree on anything about this part of your life. Some say you faded into obscurity. Others claim your later years were invented entirely by storytellers trying to explain why a flying horse became a constellation without its rider. But you know the truth, you stepped away. Because after everything, the battles, the banquets, the bizarre, theatrical errands, you've realized that the world doesn't know what to do with someone who survived. They know what to do with a hero who dies young, who rides Pegasus into the sunset and vanishes in golden light. They can carve statues of that. They can sell wine under that name. But you? You kept waking up. And the longer you walk, the more it hits you. The people didn't love Bellerophon. They loved the idea of Bellerophon. The version with windswept hair, triumphant posture, and a conveniently vague origin story. The real version, you got older, grew quiet, forgot how to pose. You stop wearing your sword. The children stop pointing. You start noticing birds more. Not the dramatic, eagle-descending kind, just regular sparrows. You listen to their calls and think, they've got it figured out. No legends. No expectations. Just wing, twig, sleep, repeat. But even as your days simplify, something else begins to fester. An itch. Not of the body, but of the spirit. One you're not sure how to scratch. You try fasting. That doesn't help. You try climbing hills, shouting into the sky. No God's answer. You try praying. Nothing. You try drinking, just once. Pegasus would have hated it. Eventually, you come to a hill where the wind never stops moving. You lie down, arms stretched wide. You stare at the sky, the same sky Pegasus vanished into, and whisper the question you haven't dared ask out loud until now. What happens to a hero when the story is over? And for the first time, even the wind goes quiet. Pegasus doesn't come back. That's the truth that finally settles into your bones like cold. He's not circling Olympus waiting for an invitation to descend. He's not hiding behind a cloud, waiting for the next monster to show up. He's gone. Taken, lifted, ascended, whatever word you choose, it amounts to the same thing. The winged horse, your other half, your impossible companion, now belongs to the heavens. You try to make peace with it. You tell yourself it's what he always wanted. You imagine him ferrying Zeus's thunderbolts, dodging comets, basking in ambrosia. But nothing you imagine makes it feel any less like abandonment. You walk more. You grow quieter. And slowly, you start to slip from the conversations in palace halls and village inns alike. When someone mentions your name, it's with the tone of someone recalling a dream they once had as a child, vivid, but blurry at the edges. Then, one afternoon, without warning, you snap. You were supposed to be done. Retired. Revered. Forgotten, maybe, but peacefully. But instead, something claws at your insides. Something that says no. This can't be it. Not after what you did. Not after what you lost. You look up, sky stretched wide and bright and cruel, and a thought lodges itself in your mind like a splinter. If Pegasus can reach Olympus, why can't you? You don't laugh when the idea comes. You should. It's absurd. It's the kind of delusion reserved for megalomaniacs and badly written plays. But you don't dismiss it. You start planning. You find old straps, reinforce leather bindings, take measurements in the wind. You draw sketches in the dirt of how high you'll need to climb, how far the clouds stretch, how thin the air becomes. You convince yourself Olympus isn't a metaphor. It's a place, a location, a height. Historians still argue whether Bellerophon's attempt to reach Olympus was ever meant to be interpreted literally. Some call it a parable for pride, a warning to those who rise too high. Others believe it happened exactly as told, that a man did indeed try to ride into the home of the gods and was struck down for his arrogance. But in your mind, it's not arrogance. It's reunion. It's reclamation. You don't want to rule Olympus. You just want to be there. With him. You build the contraption yourself. A makeshift harness. Ropes bound together with sealskin and charm weaving from a confused village priest who thinks you're constructing a very elaborate weather experiment. You climb to the highest peak near Lycia, a mountain where snow lingers even in summer, and where thunder tends to curl its fingers around the stones at dusk. You wait for the right wind, for the right silence, for the moment when you can almost hear wings again. Then you leap, and for a second, less than a heartbeat, it works. You are in the air. Not on Pegasus, not truly flying, but ascending. Up, up, against reason and weight and time itself. The air thins. Your ears ring. Your vision sharpens, then blurs. You see shapes in the clouds, swirls that might be thrones, lightning bolts that hum with judgment. Olympus is close, so close you can taste the metal in the mist. And then, it stops. There's no godly voice. No dramatic thunder. Just a sudden shift in the wind and the quiet betrayal of gravity reclaiming what was never hers to lend. Your makeshift harness snaps. The straps burn your skin. And the earth begins to rise toward you, fast and final and uncaring. Pegasus doesn't come. You fall. The fall doesn't kill you. That's the miracle. Or the curse. Or both. You hit the slope hard, not the sheer cliff face you expected, but a patch of bramble-covered hillside that breaks your fall just enough to let your bones keep breaking in slow motion instead of all at once. You roll. You bounce. You scream once, then can't remember if you kept screaming after that. When you stop moving, it takes a while for the pain to register. The wind has been knocked so far out of you it forgets where your lungs are. All you feel at first is light, then heat, then nothing. When you wake, it's dusk. Or dawn? You can't tell. Your leg is twisted wrong. Your arm hums with fire. Your lips are cracked. There's blood, sure, but also dirt, leaves, the sour taste of crushed berries you landed in. You try to sit up. You almost black out. You stay still. The sky above you is still so high, so far, Olympus hidden behind an uncaring blue that makes you feel ridiculous. This is what it feels like to fall from greatness. Not in a blaze of drama. Not with a shout and a chorus of gods laughing. Just silence. Just thorn bushes. Just the soft rustle of birds deciding you're not a threat anymore. You lie there for hours, maybe a day. Someone finds you eventually, an old goatherd who nearly drops his walking stick when he recognizes your face. He says your name like a question. You don't answer. What's the point? They carry you down the mountain. Gently. Carefully. As if you're still sacred. As if you might shatter completely. Back in Lycia, the healers do what they can. Your bones set. Your skin stitches. Your body recovers in the ways bodies are built to. But your pride? Your legend? Those are less cooperative. You don't walk the same. You limp. You don't ride. You can't. The saddle might as well be a mountain now. Word spreads, of course. Fast. Faster than any winged horse ever flew. Bellerophon tried to fly to Olympus. He fell. He survived. But the myth changed. It twisted. Now the children who once played at being you start playing differently. They fall off crates and call it doing a Bellerophon. Priests start using your name in cautionary tales, the way they used to use Icarus, as if you two were pen pals in bad decisions. You're not invited to councils anymore. Not formally. You still have your title, but it's more of a courtesy now. A relic. No one says it aloud, but you can see it in their eyes. They think you've lost something. Glory, perhaps. Sanity, maybe. Pegasus, definitely. You try to return to your walks, but now the villagers don't meet your eye. Not out of fear. Not even awe. Just discomfort. You're not the hero who flew anymore. You're the man who fell. You spend more time in your olive grove. The cucumbers are overgrown. The thyme has gone woody. You let it. There's something comforting in letting things become useless without fuss. The stars still shine. The wind still rustles through the trees. Pegasus doesn't return. Not even in dreams. Maybe that's the punishment. Or maybe it's the mercy. Historians say this was Bellerophon's final fall, not of body, but of place. From prince to cripple. From symbol to warning. But what they miss is that you're still here. That despite the limp, despite the whispering, despite the silence of Olympus, you wake up each morning. You eat bread. You sit beneath the sky. And sometimes, you still imagine wings. You stop attending feasts. Not out of bitterness, you simply realize there's no place for you at tables where people would rather not remember what ambition looks like when it hits the ground. You become something of a ghost in your own story. No one forbids you from the palace, but they don't seek you out either. You exist on the edge, visible only when someone feels obligated to mention your name. Once, a young noble tries to talk to you at a public gathering. He kneels, introduces himself with 3 too many titles, and calls you honored slayer of the Chimera. You squint at him. Which head? You ask. He stammers. You smile politely. He never speaks to you again. You're not angry. Not really. The anger burned out somewhere between the fall and the second winter in your garden. What remains is something quieter, more brittle. A kind of tired knowing. You watch others now, young heroes, fresh names, new legends in the making. They arrive with bright eyes and sharpened swords, eager to ride whatever beast the poets throw at them. You don't warn them. You let them run. What would you say, anyway? Don't fly too high? They'd laugh. You would have too. One afternoon, you hear that someone has started telling your story in public squares again, but differently. Not as a tragedy. Not as a caution. As a comedy. They reenact your fall with exaggerated flailing. Children giggle. It spreads. Bellerophon the tumbler. Cloud kisser. Lord of the thorn bush. You hear it all. You chuckle once. Then you stop. It's hard to know what stings more, being forgotten or being remembered badly. You stop going into town. You spend most days under a fig tree now, the same one where you first realized Pegasus was never coming back. The leaves rustle. Sometimes they sound like wings, if you squint with your ears. Sometimes not. But there's something you start to do that surprises even you. You write. Not poems. Not boasts. Just fragments. Observations. The curve of the hills in the morning fog. The way an olive pit splits clean when dried in the sun. You write them on scraps of parchment, or on smooth stones, or sometimes just in the dirt with a stick before the wind wipes them away. You don't know who you're writing for. Maybe no one. Maybe just to prove you're still here. One night, a traveler stops at your garden. Doesn't recognize you. Asks if the old hero lives nearby. You nod toward the hills. He went that way. The traveler thanks you and walks off. You don't correct him. You sit back down and keep carving a half-finished thought into the dirt. Even fallen stars still glow when the world forgets to look up. Historians rarely mention these years. They're too quiet. No bells. No prophecies. Just silence and shadow. But if they ever did look closely, they might notice something odd. How many villagers in Lycia started planting fig trees where none had grown before. How children in one village carved wings into the sides of their toy horses. How, for reasons no one can explain, the constellation Pegasus was suddenly taught alongside a story of a man who almost joined him. Almost. Not quite, but close enough to haunt the sky. The seasons blur. Your limp becomes a part of you, not something you think about anymore. Your hands grow more weathered, your face heavier, your hair thinner. You age slowly, not like a man in decline but like a stone slowly settling into the earth. You don't fade, you sink. One day, you realize no one has bowed to you in weeks. You realize you haven't missed it. The quiet becomes your companion. It doesn't applaud. It doesn't whisper. It just exists. A presence like an old friend who no longer needs to fill the silence with stories. You stop wondering what Pegasus is doing. Whether he's still streaking across Olympus delivering thunderbolts or whether the gods grew tired of him too. Maybe he's a constellation now, fixed and frozen in the sky while you rot in a fig orchard. Maybe that's the better fate. Maybe not. You think about flying less. Not because you've made peace with the ground, but because you've made peace with the fact that the sky no longer calls your name. Sometimes, pilgrims pass through. They ask for directions to the hero's grove. They light candles. They mutter your name like it's sacred. You don't stop them. You also don't tell them they're squatting 6 feet from where you dumped old cucumber trimmings. Let them believe. One boy stays after the others leave. He's maybe 10, with a stick for a sword and a scarf tied around his head like a war helmet. He stares at you. Are you him? You squint at him. Who? The one who flew. You pause. Then shrug. Not anymore. He looks disappointed, as if heroes are supposed to be taller and more gold-plated. Did it hurt? Falling? You look up at the sky, the way you do sometimes, not for answers anymore, but out of habit. Yeah, you say. But not the way you think. He sits next to you in the dirt. Says nothing. Just chews on a fig stem until his mother calls and he leaves. You don't know why that moment stays with you. But it does. It's not all sad. Some days are surprisingly pleasant. You rediscover the taste of some warm fruit. You hum songs with no lyrics. You remember what it felt like to fly, not the fear, not the heat, but the silence between the clouds. The perfect stillness, where nothing hurt and everything waited. And you wonder if that was the real reward, not Olympus, not fame, but that moment where the world disappeared beneath you and you didn't care. Historians never write about that part. They focus on the fall, the curse, the punishment, but none of them ever ask what it's like to live after. You begin to. It's lonely, sure, but it's honest. There's freedom in obscurity. No one asks you to slay monsters anymore. No one expects you to ride thunder. You sleep when you want. Eat when you want. Sometimes you forget which day it is. Sometimes you don't care. You think, maybe you were never meant to be remembered forever. Maybe that was never the point. Maybe the point was just to try, to reach, to fly, to fall, to crawl back to your feet and keep walking. You never saw Olympus, but you saw the sky. And that, you realize, was enough. The days grow longer, then shorter, and longer again. The rhythm of the seasons continues its slow metronome, indifferent to who you used to be. You notice the figs ripen earlier now. Or maybe you just wake earlier. Sleep doesn't visit the way it used to. Not bad sleep, just lighter, like your body is waiting for a summons that never arrives. And then, just once, it does. It's nothing dramatic. No lightning. No divine voice cracking through the clouds. Just a noise. A beat. Familiar, impossibly distant. One early dawn, before the birds remember to sing, you hear the rhythm of wings in the sky. Your breath catches. You hobble out of your small hut and squint into the pre-dawn haze, heart pounding in a body that's long since stopped expecting anything new. And there, for a moment, you see a shape. Not Pegasus, no. Too small. But similar. Something with wings. White. Fast. A flicker only. And then it's gone. You stand there for a long time, bare feet in the cold grass, goosebumps rising. You don't call after it. You don't chase it. You just smile. Not because you think Pegasus returned, but because you thought he might. It's that hope, more than the sight itself, that stays with you. Later that week, you hear news from the temple. They've named a new star. A bright one, appearing suddenly in the night sky, close to the constellation Pegasus. They're calling it Hippios, the rider. Some say it's a tribute. Others say it's a sign. A scholar tells you this with great enthusiasm, not realizing who you are. You nod, and say, interesting. You don't tell him your name. And slowly, a shift happens. Not in the sky. In the people. The children stop mocking the fall. The stories come around again. The hero who rode the winged horse. The one who faced monsters. The one who fell from the heavens and lived. Lived long, quietly, humbly. A rare thing in a world that loves glory but has no patience for aftermath. You start hearing your name in songs again. Not the clumsy ones. Better ones. Softer. Stories not just about power, but about grace. About walking through pain with your head up. About surviving your own myth. Pegasus becomes a symbol now, not just of flight, but of freedom, of dreams that defy logic. They paint him on pottery, carve him into stone lintels, etch him on shields. And you? You become something else. Not the prince. Not the warrior. A reminder. That greatness isn't always loud. That legends don't always end in death. That falling isn't failure, it's just another kind of descent. One evening, a girl brings you a loaf of bread and a question. She asks what Pegasus smelled like. You pause. Like warm clouds, you say. And wind after rain. She nods like that makes perfect sense. You sit with her a while and tell her a story, not of battle or glory, but of the time Pegasus stole a whole tray of temple figs and pretended he didn't know how to land so you'd let it go. She laughs. A real laugh. Not the kind that needs a hero. Just one that understands being human. And for the first time in a long time, you feel something strange. Not sadness. Not regret. Just peace. The olive trees bend in the wind now, not like dancers but like old friends greeting you gently. You know each one by the tilt of its trunk, the twist of its branches, the way certain leaves glint more silver than green when the sun catches them just so. This is your world now, rows of trees, birds you've named, soil that remembers the press of your heel. You start teaching. Not formally. You're not gathering pupils or starting a school. But when someone comes and asks, how to mend a fence, how to find true north without the stars, how to wait until a fig is ready, you show them. Not because you're trying to pass something on. Just because it feels right. You don't tell stories about the Chimera anymore. Not unless someone begs. And even then, you describe the goat head first. Its eyes. How it blinked slowly. How it looked confused, like it had just been woken up and wasn't sure why people were yelling. You tell them the fire wasn't what scared you, it was the teeth. Too many. Too flat. Wrong. You don't lie, but you leave things out. They wouldn't believe the whole story, anyway. Sometimes, when you're alone, you think about your spear. The first one. The one you lost in the Chimera's throat. You wonder if it's still out there, buried in some ridge, rusted down to a nub. You wonder if someone will find it centuries from now and think it belonged to a god. You hope not. You hope they think it belonged to a man who tried his best and didn't always win. Because that's the part no one ever wants to remember about heroes, that they're tired, that they're complicated, that their victories often come at the cost of everything they didn't know they'd miss. One late afternoon, as the sun lays down behind the hill in long strips of gold, you catch a shadow against the clouds that makes your breath hitch. It's not Pegasus. Of course it's not. But it could be. For a second. A flicker. And that second is enough. You sit under the fig tree, your back against the bark, your legs stretched out, your joints aching in that dull, familiar way. You have a new walking stick. It's carved with a spiral like a tiny sky wrapped into wood. A gift from a boy who thinks you're just a kind old man who knows where to find the best honey. The fig tree drops one perfectly ripe fruit into your hand. You eat it slowly. Let it bleed down your fingers. Let the sugar stay on your tongue. You think, I flew once. And it no longer needs to mean more than that. The fig tree finally cracks in a storm. You wake to the sound, a low groan and a muffled crash, not violent, just inevitable. When you limp out into the garden, it's lying there across the path like a sleeping beast, its trunk split and its leaves soaked and glinting like wet feathers. You kneel beside it, run your hand along the bark. Part of you wants to be angry. Another part just feels lucky it lasted this long. You spend the day cutting it down piece by piece. You save the largest section, carve it into a bench. It takes days, maybe a week. You're not fast anymore, and you don't try to be. The bench ends up crooked and soft-edged, but it fits you. You place it right at the edge of the grove, where the wind always seems to sigh. This is where you sit now. Most evenings. Some mornings. When people visit, they find you there. Sometimes they ask questions. Sometimes they just sit quietly. You're not mysterious anymore, not exactly. You're known. Not in the grand heroic way, but in the way a favorite trail is known, or a story told too many times but still worth hearing. You've become part of the landscape. One day a scribe from the capital arrives. He bows deeply, spills ink on his scrolls, and asks if he might record your story for the royal archive. You shrug. It's already out there, you say. Just listen at the market. But he insists. He wants the real version. Your version. You tell him a few things. Not everything. You leave out the worst of the wounds. You soften the pride. You skip the nights you cried in your garden because your fingers wouldn't hold a knife straight anymore. But you tell him how it felt to fly. You tell him what Pegasus smelled like, and how the Chimera made a sound like steam escaping a cracked pot. You even tell him what it was like to fall, how the wind went out of your lungs and didn't come back for a long, long time. He writes it all down. When he asks what lesson people should take from your life, you pause. Then say, don't chase Olympus. Just fly as high as the sky you're given. He writes that down too. After he leaves, a few more visitors come. A girl from a distant town who says her grandmother used to hum songs about you while baking bread. A man who swears Pegasus once flew over his fishing boat and blessed the catch. You smile, let them talk, and offer them fruit and shade and whatever wisdom time hasn't yet weathered away. You think sometimes about how your name has stretched. How Bellerophon once meant fire and flight and impossible victories, and now it means you. An old man with stories and a crooked bench. And you're okay with that. You still look up at the stars. You still see Pegasus. He's always there now, glittering in the sky, his wings frozen mid-beat, as if waiting for something. You no longer feel like you've been left behind. You feel like he's holding a place for you. A silhouette stitched into the heavens, not as a trophy, but as a reminder. You fly in memory now. In stories. In constellations. And sometimes, that's enough. One morning, you don't wake with the sun. The birds sing. The trees breathe their slow, leafy rhythm. But you remain still, your head leaning gently against the curve of the bench you carved from the fig tree that once stood sentinel over your little world. Your hands are folded, not in any dramatic pose, just resting, comfortably, as if you were halfway through a thought. The sky above is cloudless. Quiet. There's no fanfare. No thunder. Just peace. The first person to find you is the boy with the scarf who once asked if it hurt to fall. He's older now, voice deepening, shoulders broader. He says nothing at first. Just sits beside you, mirroring the way you used to sit in silence. Then he gets up and walks to the village. The news spreads slowly, but once it catches, it carries. Not like wildfire, like wind. Gentle. Persistent. It curls around every hill, every field you once walked, every path where someone remembered the limp and the low, kind voice. People don't wail. They don't need to. Instead, they gather. They bring offerings, not coins or weapons, but stories. Each person has one. The baker tells of the time you fixed her oven door. The mason remembers how you warned him about an unstable arch. A child swears you told him he could one day fly, even without wings. And above it all, Pegasus glows quietly in the night sky, the stars of his form so constant, so calm, that it feels impossible to imagine them ever not being there. They bury you under your tree, what remains of it. No tomb. No monument. Just the bench, your name carved by hands more careful than skilled. They don't call you a prince. Not a slayer. Not a demigod. Just Bellerophon. The man who flew. The man who fell. The man who lived. And over time, something rare happens. You are not forgotten. You are not worshipped. You are remembered. Properly. Fully. With all your cracks and your humor, your faded glory and the kindness you never needed to offer, but always did. You become a kind of truth that walks beside myth. A whisper shared between stars and soil. Pegasus remains in the sky. Still. Patient. A constellation etched across the velvet dark, wing raised, as if forever waiting for a rider who already found his peace below. Wind down. And now, as you lie in your own quiet place, the earth resting gently against your bones, the world turns without you, as it must. Slowly, steadily, with the hum of olive leaves and the hush of dusk settling in the corners of the sky. There are no more monsters to fight. No riddles left unanswered. Just the simple hush of a life that burned brightly, then softened into something steady. Breathe deeply now, as the sky folds itself over you. Imagine the stars, gentle and gold, watching from far above. Not judging, just glowing. Softly, faithfully. You did everything you were meant to do. Maybe even more. You flew higher than any man had dared. You fell, yes, but you stood again. And that, in the end, was the greater feat. Let that thought drift through you now. Not every fall is a failure. Some are simply how we learn to land. So rest, rider. Rest beneath your fig tree. Let the stories carry you, slow and warm, like waves lapping a forgotten shore. The world remembers you well. And the sky, always, keeps your place. Sweet dreams.